ever feel like you're just drowning in headlines? You're scrolling, swiping, trying to keep up, but it all just feels like this constant barrage of information.
No, absolutely. It's overwhelming. And trying to
Mhm.
figure out what actually matters
Yeah.
and how it connects, that's the real challenge.
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to do today. This is our deep dive into a whole stack of recent headlines. We're covering, global markets, geopolitical stuff, some really fascinating tech shifts, even personal finance.
Right, the goal is to cut through all that noise.
Yeah, cut through the noise and pull out the essential insights, see how these forces are shaping things right now. So let's just jump in.
Sounds good. And what's often really interesting is seeing how things that seem totally separate, well, they actually create ripples across completely different areas.
Okay.
We can start with some pretty clever corporate moves and how the big banks are trying to handle it all.
Okay, first up, something called tariff engineering. Sounds super technical, right?
It does, yeah.
But it's actually this legal and honestly pretty smart way businesses try to lower the duties they pay on imports.
That's exactly it. It's about strategically tweaking an item, maybe changing the materials, altering the size a bit or the composition.
How so?
The whole point is to get it classified under a different harmonized system code. A different code means often a lower tariff. It's like finding a loophole, but, a legal one within the classification rules.
Okay, so give us some examples. Like, what does this look like in the real world? Any surprising ones?
Oh, definitely. My favorite has got to be Converse All-Stars. You know, the sneakers?
Yeah, of course.
Well, some models, they intentionally add a little bit of fuzzy felt fabric on the soles, not the usual full rubber bottom,
Like, how'd they do that? Fuzzy felt.
to get them classified as slippers.
No way.
Yes. Slippers have a much lower tariff than athletic shoes. So that little bit of fuzz saves them a bundle.
That's wild. So the stuff on your feet could be like, tax strategy.
Exactly. And Columbia Sportswear,
Ugh.
they added tiny zippered pockets below the waist on some women's shirts. Turns out that specific feature got them a tariff exemption.
Huh.
And remember the Snuggie, that blanket with sleeves?
Oh, yeah, the Snuggie?
They actually won a lawsuit arguing it should be classified as a blanket, not clothing. Nearly cut their tariff costs in half.
Hmm.
Makes you wonder what else is out
It
there.
really does. Makes you look at labels differently. And apparently, this isn't even new. There was an old Supreme Court case.
Yeah, way back in 1882, the court basically said coating sugar with molasses to get it into a lower tariff category was fine, perfectly legal, as long as, they were honest about it with customs.
So there's a precedent. But there must be limits, right? You can't just, I don't know, paint something a different color.
Right. That's where the commercial reality test comes in. The changes have to be real. They have to genuinely alter the product. Like Ford tried to import cargo vans as passenger vans just by taking the seats out temporarily.
And Customs didn't buy it.
Nope. They said, look, these vans were never meant for passengers. The seats were just props. So, misclassification. Companies can actually ask customs for a binding ruling beforehand to make sure their engineering will fly.
Gotcha. So it's this whole game almost. What does this tell us about global trade now? Is it just companies being sneaky, or is it just how things work?
It's probably a bit of both. It shows how businesses are always looking to optimize, right? And how complex trade rules can get. You've got companies like Winnebago openly saying they plan to use tariff engineering.
Hmm.
And the CEO of Gap, Richard Dixon, he mentioned how diversifying where they source things helps them handle these complex headwinds like tariffs, even though they still might face a big hit, like $100 to $150 million if tariffs stick around.
And the bottom line for you listening at home is that these kind of obscure corporate tactics, they directly hit the products you see on shelves and the prices you pay. Sneakers, shirts, maybe even your RV someday.
It's a really clear link between global policy and your wallet.
Okay, so speaking of those bigger forces, we've seen how companies maneuver. But these strategies, they're obviously shaped by the wider economic picture. Let's pivot to the Federal Reserve. They just had a meeting, right? And the expectation as of June 18th, 2025 was hold steady on interest rates.
That was the general consensus, yeah. But the real focus, where everyone's eyes were, was on the dot plot. That's the Fed's own forecast for where rates might go.
And what are the dots saying?
Well, that's the thing. They're kind of all over the place. Expectations are really varied right now. Some see 0 cuts this year, some maybe 1, maybe 2. It just shows how much uncertainty there is. The Fed's really walking a tightrope.
And it's not just economic data they're juggling, right? There's political pressure, too. President Trump hasn't been shy about wanting lower rates.
No, he's been quite vocal, criticizing Fed Chair Jerome Powell, sometimes using pretty strong language. That adds another layer of complexity for the Fed.
So how do tariffs, like the ones we just talked about, fit into the Fed's thinking? Are they worried about inflation?
They're definitely watching it. I mean, so far, the overall impact of tariffs on, like, macro prices seems to have been, quote, minimal. But the future effect, that's still a big question mark.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the Trump administration is actually pointing out that import prices from places like China, Canada, Mexico have apparently declined since the tariffs first went up.
That's counterintuitive.
It is. So the Fed has a lot of conflicting signals to sort through.
So for you, thinking about your own budget, maybe a loan, maybe just the cost of groceries, keeping an eye on what the Fed signals with that dot plot. It's not just abstract economics. It directly shapes the financial weather you're living in.
Absolutely. And another big piece of economic news, speaking of global deals and national interests,
Yeah.
is the U.S. Steel acquisition. Japan's Nippon Steel finally sealed the deal.
Right, and that was after President Trump had publicly said he wanted U.S. Steel to stay American-owned.
Exactly. But the deal went through, although with a very interesting condition. President Trump pushed for what's called a golden share.
A golden share, what does that do?
It essentially gives the government, specifically him in this context, veto power over certain key decisions at U.S. Steel. Things like moving the headquarters out of the U.S., shifting production overseas, cutting U.S. jobs, even some big facility closures or future acquisitions.
Yeah. That's unusual, a significant level of government, say, in a private company.
It really is. It kind of blurs the lines between business and national policy. And zooming out a bit, this is happening while the Trump administration is also highlighting a rise in blue-collar wages. They're saying these wages went up 1.7% annually over the last 5 months.
Is that a lot?
Apparently, it's the biggest jump like that since 1968. They're attributing it to falling inflation and their pro-growth policies.
So you see this mix, right? A global acquisition gets conditional approval, while domestically there's talk of rising wages for certain workers. It really shows how these big deals and national policies connect and how they can directly impact jobs and paychecks in communities across the country. For you, it might mean job security or maybe changes in your local economy.
Definitely interconnected.
Okay, let's switch gears now. From economics and steel to the digital world and how tech is just fundamentally changing work. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy has been pretty blunt about AI.
Yeah, he has.
He basically expects AI will mean fewer corporate jobs at Amazon overall down the line. And his message to employees was stark. Get curious about AI, learn about it, train on it, use it, experiment with it, basically adapt or
potentially get left behind.
Yeah.
And his view isn't isolated. There are these new reports projecting a huge rise in humanoid robots in the workplace.
Humanoid robots, like walking, talking robots.
Marie, not quite talking like us yet, but yes, robots shaped like humans.
Yeah.
One report estimates 2 million of them working within a decade.
2 million.
And get this, 300 million by 2050?
Whoa.
The potential market size. They're talking $1.7 trillion. A big part of the argument is that these robots could help fill major labor shortages.
And we're seeing companies invest already, right? Like Gap.
Exactly. Gap just put $58 million into robotics and automation at their distribution center in Tennessee.
Ah.
They're using robots from Boston Dynamics, the ones that do the backflips.
Yeah, those are impressive.
They're using them for handling orders. And interestingly, this move is actually creating 100 new jobs, likely to manage or work alongside the robots.
Ah. So it's not just replacing jobs, it's shifting them.
It seems like it, at least in this case.
Yeah.
And analysts are really bullish. Dan Ives calls this a golden age for AI software, driving tons of uses. He points to companies like Oracle, Palantir, IBM, Salesforce as leaders. And Charles Payne made the point that tech historically leads more bull markets than any other sector.
So for you listening, AI isn't some sci-fi concept anymore. It's actively reshaping industries, changing the job market, creating some roles, altering others, and it's a huge area for potential investment. Understanding AI's trajectory seems pretty crucial for everyone's future career and finances.
And because AI is so crucial, the fight for talent is getting incredibly intense, high stakes. OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman made this really startling claim recently.
What was that?
He said Meta, Facebook's parent company, tried to poach OpenAI employees by offering bonuses as high as $100 million.
Oh, wait, $100 million bonus? Just to switch jobs?
That's the claim. To join Meta's superintelligence team, Altman did add, though, that none of OpenAI's, quote, best people took the offers. Still, it shows the insane value placed on top AI minds right now.
That's just staggering. And speaking of companies making big AI plays, what's Klarna doing? The buy now, pay later company?
Yeah, their CEO, Sebastian Siemiatkowski, he has this really ambitious goal. Turn Klarna into a super app, like WeChat in China, but for the West.
A super app, meaning it does everything.
Pretty much, using AI to personalize everything, banking, shopping, recommendations, and get this, they're even launching mobile phone plans in the US now.
Huh. But haven't super apps struggled outside of Asia?
They have, yeah. It's been a tough nut to crack in Western moments. Klarna seems to be betting that AI personalization is the key to finally making it work here, making the app indispensable.
So the takeaway here seems to be the race for AI talent is fierce, driving up costs and competition. And companies are using AI not just for efficiency, but to fundamentally change their services, which could really alter how you interact with tech every day, from finance to, well, maybe even your phone bill soon. It's moving fast.
Very fast.
Okay, now let's shift again, this time to global tensions and how they echo in financial markets. The situation between Israel and Iran has unfortunately worsened, with missile exchanges ongoing since around June 13th, 2025.
Yes, it's a deeply concerning escalation. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, issued a very strong warning about irreparable damage if the U.S. were to get involved militarily.
And President Trump has also made forceful statements, hasn't he? Threatening Iran's leader, demanding unconditional surrender, and there are reports he's even considering U.S. military action.
Right. And the immediate critical concern for global markets is oil, specifically the Strait of Hormuz.
That narrow waterway, why is it so important?
It's a massive choke point. About 20%, one-fifth of all the world's petroleum liquids consumption passes through there every day.
20%, wow.
So if that strait were closed or seriously disrupted due to conflict,
Oil prices would spike.
massively. Analysts are throwing around numbers like $100, even up to $160 per barrel. It highlights just how sensitive global energy supplies are to this kind of geopolitical flashpoint.
And it's not just missiles and ships anymore, is it? There's cyber warfare, too.
Exactly. We saw a major incident where pro-Israel hackers called Predatory Sparrow apparently wiped out over $90 million from Iran's biggest crypto exchange, Nobitex.
90 million, gone.
That's the report. And Nobitex has known links to entities under sanctions and groups like Hamas. So it's cyber warfare with clear political motives and targets.
It's a sobering reminder, isn't it? How conflicts far away can ripple outwards, hitting energy prices, rattling financial security, and even spilling into the digital realm. These things aren't isolated.
Not at all. They have very real-world consequences for everyone.
Okay, let's bring it back home now, closer to our own wallets. Let's talk housing, because a lot of people are wondering what's happening there. Recent numbers showed housing starts really took a dive.
Yeah, they plummeted in May, hitting a 5-year low. The annual pace dropped to about 1.26 million starts.
And mortgage rates have actually been coming down a bit, right?
They have. The 30-year fixed rate dipped to 6.84%, which is the lowest it's been since April. But here's the twist. Even with lower rates, mortgage demand also fell.
Huh. So lower rates aren't tempting buyers.
It seems not, or at least not enough to reverse the trend. Demand for purchase mortgages dropped 3%, and even refinance demand slipped 2%. It suggests buyers are maybe still hesitant, perhaps waiting, or maybe affordability is still just too stretched for many.
But wait, could this actually be good news for potential buyers? Less demand, maybe more houses sitting around?
Potentially, yes. That dip in demand, combined with the fact that housing inventory, the number of homes for sale, is getting closer to pre-pandemic levels. Well, it's putting pressure on sellers.
Meaning
More sellers are cutting their asking prices. The market seems to be becoming more buyer-friendly than it's been in quite a while.
Okay, so if you're out there thinking about buying, selling, or even refinancing, these are definitely key signals to watch. The ground might be shifting a bit.
It's definitely a market in transition. Worth paying close attention to those local trends.
Now, shifting from houses to how we manage our money overall, there's a trend emerging in financial planning that's, well, a bit concerning.
What's that?
The number of Americans who identify as having a forward-looking financial strategy, what researchers call planners, has dropped. It's down to only 40%.
Only 40%. Wow, what was it before?
It was closer to 50% back in February 2024, so a noticeable decline in just over a year.
And how do they define these planners versus what's the opposite?
The opposite are reactors. Planners tend to have more savings, less credit card debt. Reactors generally have higher debt and lower savings. They're dealing with things more as they come up rather than planning ahead.
Gotcha. Is there a generational thing happening here?
Big time. A whopping 73% of Gen Z are identified as reactors, whereas for baby boomers, it's flipped. 54% are still planners.
That's a huge difference.
It is. And here's maybe the most surprising part. This trend towards being more reactive isn't just among lower income groups. Even high-income earners are showing this shift.
Really, even people making good money are planning less.
Apparently so. It suggests maybe a broader cultural shift, or maybe just the impact of recent economic uncertainty on everyone's mindset.
It really makes you stop and think about your own approach, doesn't it? Are you actively planning for your financial future, for retirement, or are you more in that reactive mode? Understanding these trends is pretty vital for hitting those long-term goals.
Definitely food for thought. Okay, let's wrap up with a quick look at some other interesting shifts and headlines that caught our eye. What else is going on?
Well, in the auto world, a couple of things. Ram Trucks is boosting its warranty, a new 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty for the 2026 models. They say it's partly a response to people taking out longer loans to buy trucks these days.
Makes sense. Keep the truck running as long as the payments last.
Sorta, yeah. And on the other end of the spectrum, Chevy just unveiled the 2026 Corvette ZR1X. They're calling it a hypercar. Apparently, thanks to electrification, it does 0-60 in under 2 seconds and hits 233 miles per hour.
Under 2 seconds. Wow.
Right. Then in healthcare, a big move. Eli Lilly put $1.3 billion behind Verve Therapeutics. They're working on a gene editing treatment for heart disease that could be like a one-and-done cure.
That would be incredible.
Huge potential. On the fun side, Nintendo Switch 2 seems to be a massive hit. It fueled a $39 billion stock rally for them this year, and they sold 3.5 million units in just the first 4 days.
Gamers are happy.
Seems so. Travel looks a bit shaky, though. JetBlue's stock took a hit because of a general slowdown in travel demand. And there was some online buzz around JP Morgan's CEO Jamie Dimon pushing for in-office work, while apparently making exceptions for some top executives. Led to a lot of rules for thee, but not for me talk.
Ah, the classic corporate dilemma.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, and for travelers through New York, Capital One just opened its biggest airport lounge yet at JFK. It's open 24/7, has local food, even a midnight snack service.
Fancy.
And just a quick reminder for everyone, U.S. stock markets are closed this Thursday, June 19th for the Juneteenth holiday.
Good reminder. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, wow, it really hits you how interconnected everything is, doesn't it?
It really does.
From, tariff tricks affecting sneaker prices, to AI changing job markets, to tensions overseas, potentially hitting your gas bill or even your crypto. It's all part of the same complex picture.
Absolutely. And maybe the big takeaway is this. In a world where tech lets companies engineer around trade rules, and AI is constantly shifting the ground under our feet, our own skills, things like financial planning, critical thinking, they become more vital than ever.
Yeah, navigating all this, spotting the risks, seizing the opportunities, it really comes down to individual awareness and preparation.
Being able to adapt to these unexpected events and leverage the new tools available.
So the final thought for you is, what will you do with this knowledge? As you go about your day, maybe think about how these bigger currents, the economic shifts, the tech advances, the global tensions, might actually be shaping your own path, and what opportunities or challenges that presents for you.